Good evening, everyone. It is once again Ted the Speed Learner, and tonight I'm going to teach you about punctuation. I'm going to teach you the etymology of punctuation, and I'm going to give you a few facts about punctuation, okay? But before I begin, I want to tell you guys that I have Kindle books. I have 5 of them. They have been published, and if you want to read any of them, you let me know in the comments below, and then I will send you a link to my latest one. You can start with that first, and then I'll send you a link to the other 4. Eventually, I'm going to publish 2 more Kindle books. One's going to be entitled, Did You Remember Everything Part 2? And the second one's going to be entitled, PTCB on a Budget. I have decided that when it comes to Did You Remember Everything Part 2, I'm going to give you a bonus book called What Square on a Straight Line? It's going to be a comprehensive study on Euclid Book 10. I know you're going to look forward to that. Okay, now you're like, oh, you're going to give us more education? Yes, I am. Anyway, let's get into punctuation. Punctuation, the etymology of this thing is, it comes from the Latin word punctus, which means to pierce. And in ancient history, the Greek people rarely placed spaces between words or used punctuation to emphasize the end of sentences. It was usually the task of Greek scholars to read scrolls and correctly interpret the text before orally presenting the text to a crowd of mostly illiterate people. Okay? And this was before the 1st century, so you can just about imagine how many of these people were not functionally literate. Okay? This became an arduous task. So, we're going to use our imaginations tonight. We're going to climb aboard a plane and we're going to fly all the way to a library that almost ceased to exist due to a fire. The library I'm referring to is the Library of Alexandria. Now, I want you to imagine that you've just met one of the librarians. And this is a big-wig librarian. The name of this librarian is Aristophanes. Part of his job is to read the scrolls inside the library so he can catalog them properly. Now, can you imagine this guy reading these scrolls without punctuation? Or capital letters? Or anything that would indicate the end of one sentence and the beginning of the next? Yeah. So, like I said, there were 3 problems with these texts. The first is the lack of punctuation, obviously. The second problem was the lack of spacing between words. That'd be more fun. The final problem is some of the authors of these texts refused to use capital letters in their text. So how could you tell where one sentence ended and another one began? That was a challenge. Well, finally, Aristophanes had enough. He created the first punctuation marks ever used in ancient texts. Many Greek and Roman authors adopted these punctuation marks early on. No one in the 21st century would be able to immediately recognize any of these marks because they're not like ours. They're not like the comma, the semicolon, the whole 9 yards. But if someone with experience reading those ancient documents trained these 21st century people on how to interpret these marks, they would finally be able to read those ancient texts. Unfortunately, the Roman Empire finally rejected the punctuation marks of Aristophanes, but Christian authors revived the idea of punctuation marks. It was the work of the Archbishop of Seville named Isidore that made punctuation in text popular. If you want the full story about punctuation, you are welcome to read a web article that I found. I will place a link to this particular web article that I want you guys to read in the description of this particular video. So go ahead and click it, and you'll be able to see it. Alright. Well, I want to thank you for tuning in to this particular video. Let me know what you think about it, and I will tell you more in a future video, so I'd like for you to stay tuned.